Graef. Welcome to the Carrie Croft Show.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
You know, this has already been a ton of fun, and we're just getting started.
Hey, I'm glad you think so. This coffee is really starting to hit the head.
Well, you know, I really like to get into the core. I like to get in there. Let's just move all the peripheral bullshit aside and let's go in deep.
Washing it all
You know,
the way.
time is valuable. Life is short. What are we wasting time on? You know, your football career and, you know, all this shit that went on. Go Google that if you want to know that about Steve.
Yes. Go Google that if you want to learn that
Yeah,
stuff.
you know what we're going to learn about.
Carrie Croft Show is not about
No.
that.
So what we're going to learn about today, and we're just going to get right to it because I'm so intrigued. And I know other people are intrigued too. Because you are, how old are you now?
41.
Okay, so you're 41. You're a very attractive, successful man. You're from Ohio. So if you stack you up against all other 41-year-old males from Ohio, the percentage of them who are traveling the country in an RV by themselves is probably, let's guess.
1%? Less than.
Correct.
Less than 1%.
So you are in the less than 1%, which I find I just want to give you a standing O for so many reasons.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because you're just you. You're following you, and it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, which is more than likely getting hitched, having kids, building a fence, getting some dogs, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's your authentic self. But you, my friend, are like, this is what I'm fucking doing.
Yeah.
I just think it's amazing. So I want to peel back what life is really like in the RV. Because I think that there is, just like with anything, there's kind of a fantasy that goes along with it. If you're at a 10,000 foot view of anything, you can sort of make things up in your head that are just like, wow. And then with the onset of, when COVID hit and everyone's like, wait, let's go get an RV and live the American dream, right? So first, let's talk through when you're on the road, what is a typical, like, how long do you spend in a town? And what do you normally do? Like, what are you looking for when you stop in this new area?
So there are so many different ways to answer this question because it changes with where my particular energy is at. There are times I am in a city for a night, and there are times, like, in fact, this winter, I've been in St. Augustine, Florida for 3 months. And they both have kind of pros and cons associated with it too. Like, one of the downsides of RV living that not a lot of people talk about is the difficulty with routine. And I have difficulty with routine when I actually have a routine, but when you're actually living in an RV and popping from place to place to place, it's hard to establish, where's my gym? What's my workout? What coffee shop am I going to get work done? What are the restaurants I like going to? Where are my people? So you're constantly reinventing that all the time. Whereas when you are able to stay for a little bit longer time, there is a bit more of that consistency that gets brought in. But typically, wake up in the morning, try to get a little walk in. Then I find a local coffee shop where I can sit down, get some work done, drink some coffee, chat with the locals. And then I like finding new places to eat too. So in the evening, I'll find a cool restaurant to check out. Maybe go check out some live music. Been doing a lot of open mic lately and playing guitar, going to concerts, checking out shows. And that's kind of the rinse and repeat. Yeah. For most days.
So you really enjoy being alone.
I am a bit of a lone wolf. So I'm 41, I'm single, and a lot of individuals might ask, like, well, don't you get lonely? And I said, even though I'm alone, I don't necessarily get lonely. And if I need that personal connection, I can always go out to a restaurant or sit at a bar top or something, or get that, or go on a dating app, etc. My parents are a phone call away. My friends are a phone call away. So I'm always able to connect. So even though I'm alone, I don't typically get lonely.
Okay, so speaking of the dating apps and connecting, thank you for just going there so early on because we got a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
So, okay. And I just put this on my story because this is exactly how I envision it. I envision you with your, like, the window down and you're rolling through your hair, your ponytail's back, but it's like your hair's blowing in the wind. You've got something playing. You're kind of jamming out, right? And then you're getting off into your exit and you're like, this is my new space. This is my new spot. And then I also picture you at this, like, I picture you as like looking for like the local dive or the local, what's best to eat, whatever. So there's this tiny bar in my mind and it's not heavily crowded. You go in, you meet some girl, have a couple drinks, play some, whatever, Dwight Yoakam on the jukebox. And you're like, hey, you want to come back to the RV? And she's like, well, shit, maybe. And then I just picture you just, Vince Vaughn in Swingers. You know that scene where he's just with, come on home, girl. He's sitting with a smile and he's just throwing her around that RV and it is hot. Yeah. And then he never has to see her again. He doesn't have to deal with her bullshit, her parents, her baggage, nothing. It's like, you're out of there. So I want to know what percentage of it is like that versus you basically like I said, on the couch, hand in your pants, passing gas, just, hanging out in the RV like a, whatever. Talk to me about this.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this question is I receive a lot of individuals' projections on what they think the lifestyle is like. And they're assuming that the RV is just full of condoms and pot and like craft beers and such. And I don't smoke. I get way too anxious to smoke, and I've reduced drinking. And there's certainly not condoms just sprinkled all over the place. A more realistic view is me actually just sitting there with my hand down my pants. That's probably the more realistic view. However, occasionally there has been some really enjoyable stories and interactions and connections that have occurred over the time. However, when we zoom out, it's less about the RV and it's actually more about being single in your 40s and the I guess kind of challenge of that whole scenario of not wanting to be out as late as I once wanted to be, not wanting to drink as much that I wanted to drink, not wanting to go out to eat every single night. But if you want to date, often that's kind of what ends up happening. So there used to be this romantic idea of going to a bar or just a dive bar and meeting somebody. And now as I've gotten older, I'm thinking through, okay, so let's say I go out at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm going to have to sit there, and I don't want to drink a lot, so I'm going to just drink seltzer water for the next 3 hours. Some girl's going to walk in, and now I'm going to talk to this person for 3 hours. Now it's 11 o'clock, midnight. Maybe go back to their place. You talk a little bit more. You settle in. You maybe start engaging in some physical activity. Now it's 1 o'clock. You got to stay the night. You're holding farts in the entire night, and you're just thinking, "Holy shit! Like I want to get up early and go for my little beach walk." And it's not very romantic, but those are the types of things you start to think about a little bit when you're at my age and thinking through these different scenarios.
Do the women that you hook, like let's say you meet a girl and you're like, hey, I got an RV over in the campground. Do they basically say like, no, come over to my house? Because the idea of the RV is like, okay, you could be a serial killer. Or have you had some that are like, I'm down for the RV?
Well, typically there's been some interaction beforehand, so it's not like we're just going straight to the RV. And most of the time there's a comfort that has been established. However, even though van life is kind of popular, people still have a bit of a negative connotation with it, especially in the Midwest. If you're in Colorado or even Florida where the RV living is a little bit more common and people see it, there's a little less of a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that I'm living in this mobile type of situation. But when those experiences do happen, I would say predominantly they have not happened in the RV. They have happened on a woman's turf.
So can you, I want some imagery. Like, can you give any sort of like, what was the craziest, weirdest hookup situation? Do you have any in your head that was like, okay, this bitch was cray, or this was wild, or this went sideways? Like anything that comes to your mind?
There's a couple situations. I can remember an experience in Philadelphia where I met a lovely woman, and we went and saw one of my favorite bands, Jamestown Revival, and had an awesome concert experience at the concert. She had never seen them before, so it was this really enjoyable experience for her. She ended up really liking the band. And we bounced around to some different bars afterwards and really had a good time. And then we went back to the RV actually. And, you know, we don't have to get into all of the details per se.
We don't? Yes, we do.
We don't have to get into all the details per se. But it ended up being a really enjoyable experience. And the RV has essentially 2 single beds that can convert into a queen bed. But the other bed that I have that's kind of this, it's about this width of this table, which is probably about 36 inches, maybe 3 feet wide. It tends to hold a lot of storage. So essentially we woke up the next morning and both of us were like on this 3 foot wide little single bed that's in my RV. And I took her right to her car and she had to go like right into work. At that moment, she couldn't even go home. So she had to go right into work and do that. So those types of experiences are not common experiences, but when they happen, just like we can reflect on these various stories, they're enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right? They are enjoyable. But again, I think the perception and the projection is that, oh, Steve must be doing those types of things all the time.
That's just I hope that you are. Just in my head, I'm like, this is amazing.
Well, and that's the romanticism,
Yeah.
right? And that's the fantasy that I too would have if I was on the outside looking into this. But the reality is the majority of the time it's sitting in the van, it's watching some YouTube videos and kind of, you know, waiting to go to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock to get up early in the morning, go for a morning beach walk, check out a yoga class, go bodyboarding, and then go and get some work done and just enjoy hanging out with the new people.
So essentially life just turns out basically the way it would anywhere else. You're just on wheels.
Absolutely. I mean, my dating experience was pretty similar even when I lived in an apartment in Grandview. But what the RV life affords is this feeling of freedom and flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of freedom and flexibility. Now, there is some constraining things associated with RV living. Certainly the space is constraining, but also the ability to establish like long-standing relationships and connection, routine. The RV life can kind of constrain that, at least in the way that I do it currently. So there's pros and cons to everything. And whenever I hear people say like, wow, Steve, I'm so jealous by what it is that you're doing, I like to say, well, don't be jealous, be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And the inspiration is that I could have, to your earlier point, just did the very traditional psychologist in an office, 9 to 5, white picket fence, married, children, dog. And I could have done that. And I was going down that direction for a little while, but I made a pivot and the pendulum kind of swung the other way. And I feel like I, in my life and what I'm trying to offer the world, is better off for it.
I agree with you totally. So when you pull into a new place, are you posting up like at a campground?
No. So with RV life and getting into campgrounds, with the popularity of RV life, you kind of have to plan ahead. And I don't always have that capacity to plan ahead because I don't know exactly where it is that I'm going to want to be. So fortunately, there is a little bit of an infrastructure for RV life that isn't the campground reality, and that is, people may know Walmarts. You can park in Walmart parking lots, some of them. They're starting to cut back a little bit on that because of the RV life popularity. And then Cracker Barrels. You can go behind a Cracker Barrel often. If you're on a family vacation and you're wanting to stop at a Cracker Barrel, take a look. There's usually a sign that says RV parking in the back. And there will be a whole mess of RVs that'll stay there that particular evening. So I'll stay in RV parking lots at Cracker Barrel, Walmart, street parking. So I'll find a good street parking, maybe sometimes just downtown. I mean, I've stayed in downtown Lincoln Park, Chicago in my RV, St. Pete near Tampa. And even St. Augustine, I'll find kind of little neighborhood spots that are not parked right out in front of a house, but they're on a nice residential area. There's other street parking that's there. And so it's a nice way to feel safe, sleep for a night, and then just get up early in the morning and take off.
You've had to have met some real crazies though. And I'm not talking about just women now. I'm talking about just in general. You've had to have had some weird interactions, or have they all been basically just normal?
No, I mean, there's a cast of characters that are out there for sure. Just individuals, you know, me and my buddy Mike, I went to high school with, and he picked up the bass about 3 years ago. I picked up the guitar again about 3 years ago. So we've been playing music down in St. Augustine. And even that experience of inviting other like band members in at times, just these very interesting cast of characters that we run into over the course. Are they crazy? Are these people crazy? No, but just the interesting personalities is what makes it cool as well. Just the individuals that you run into.
Have you had any scary experiences out there on the road?
No, not really. And I think I take a lot of things for granted, being like 6'2", 260 pounds, 41. So I kind of have a little bit of street sense. I mean, I didn't grow up in South Central, so I don't know like, all the ins and outs of street common sense. But I've been through a lot of experiences. I've done a lot of international travel. So I have a bit of a spidey sense. If something doesn't feel right, I'm usually going to take off. But also just recognizing, you know what, we only have so much control over what happens in this world.
Yeah.
And, if you just only did the things that were 100% safe, you would never be able to accomplish anything. So the lifestyle comes with it some risks. The hobbies that I enjoy that catapult and spring off of the lifestyle and have some risks associated with them. International travel has risks associated with it, but nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So another thing I love about what you're doing is that you were able to take your career as a psychologist and capitalize on kind of being remote with it. Because I think, my experience going back maybe 15 years trying to find a therapist, it was very weird. I mean, it was seedy. You didn't see anybody's photos. You felt almost icky. I mean, I remember the one I have today. I've had her for 15 years. I remember actually, I'm like, okay, well, I like her last name. Her last name was Paisley. And then I called and I listened to her voice and I'm like, that sounds kind of warm and welcoming, but stern. These are the ways that I was trying to like cobble together how I would develop a relationship with my psychologist. And it was just all ass backwards. And then you'd wonder why. Like, why don't people seek it out? Because it's not accessible. And so I think today, thankfully, people are like, okay, ding, ding. And you are capitalizing on that with Mindurace.
Yes. And even when individuals want to seek help, it's interesting. Like, even though somebody might want to seek help, they might not really want to seek help. Like the steps to make it happen, to meet somebody new, they may be completely open to the endeavor, but it just feels kind of like a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. So like, what is that return on investment that you're seeking? But from my sense, I was very passionate about the ability to do mental coaching and work with people virtually. I was a sports psychologist at Ohio State for 5.5 years, and then read the Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. I had gotten broken off an engagement, took a first international trip to Thailand and Vietnam, and I was feeling a little burnout at Ohio State just because of the amount of individuals that I was seeing. And so I really started thinking, what's going to be the next chapter for me? I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the type of work that I'm engaging with. I enjoy working with athletes and other high performers on the ability to manage stress, enhance performance, lead people, and design the life that they want to live. I enjoy all that, but how can I do it on my terms? And so I started looking into more of this virtual remote piece. And this was even pre-COVID. This was like 2015, 2016. And it just started to really feel right. And so that is when I developed Mindurace, which was going to be completely virtual from the get-go for the one-on-one stuff. And then for group presentations, I'll still go and speak in front of groups or have a lunch and learn via Zoom, which is also cool. But I knew I wanted to be able to dial up and dial down the amount of people that I wanted to see. I wanted to be able to go down to Florida or Spain or Mexico or Portugal and still be able to do mental coaching with these individuals while I was away. Or if those individuals needed to pop off on a vacation, that they were still able to have mental coaching and fitness coaching, mental fitness coaching with me at any particular time. And so it really worked out. Now, am I a millionaire? No, but I'm able to, the cool thing about living in an RV and the type of career that I'm in, I don't have to make a lot of money in order to keep my head above water and do the types of things that I want to do. And if I don't have to make a lot of money to do the types of things that I want to do, I don't have to work a lot. And if I don't have to work a lot, then I can go and enjoy and do other types of things. So I've really developed a nice balance of work and life and that integration. But I'm really proud of myself for being deliberate about that looking outside of the box and recognizing what are some of the things that people think are the icing on the cake, but it's not actually. All right. And when you're able to kind of pull back the layers and recognize what's actually important in life, what is actually the things that I need in my life to feel sustenance and growth and development and connection, and get rid of the rest, you find out you really don't need as much as you thought you did.
I think we need a pregnant pause for that. Like, that was really profound. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. Think about our culture. Think about just the United States of America. And I'm not saying money isn't important, but so many people are driven by this idea of monetary wealth. And whether it's from your family, like, that's how you were raised, like, you got to work hard, you got to make money, or whether it's just your own mental grind. But if you really do take that mentality of like, it sounds so cliche, but it's true, when you're on your deathbed, or when you have, no one really knows, but when your clock is ticking, it's up, and you look back, if you can do that now though, and prioritize accordingly, how profound.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the ultimate life hack. If you can imagine yourself at 80, 85 years old on your deathbed and thinking through and doing a life reflection, what are you the most proud of? What do you have regrets about? I'm assuming it's not going to be how much money is in the bank, how large of a boat you had, how big of a house you had. It's the experiences that you had and the people that loved and cared about you. That's my assumption. I'm not there yet, but that's my assumption. So I figured if that's the lesson that my 85-year-old self can teach me now, then I think that's a pretty good voice to listen to. And to your earlier point, like just the achievement culture in the United States and Western world in general, I've been down that route, and I found that it doesn't actually lead to, happiness. And sometimes people mistake the cake for the icing on the cake, and the actual cake is in our connections. And do you feel like you are growing in the way that you want to grow? Not because society tells you that these are the things that you need to do, but because deep down in your heart and your soul, those are the things that you want to do.
So are most of your clients then, do you have to be an athlete or like some sort of high performer? Or like, is that your niche? Or do you have any just average Joes?
Yeah, well, both. And in fact, I feel sometimes like a little bit of a fraud, because a lot of my marketing and the clients that I've worked towards have been on high performance and helping people become higher performers. And lately I've really kind of taken a different mindset on how can we be excellently average? When did average become such a bad thing? I'm an average guitar player and I fucking love it. I don't need to be a great guitar player. I don't need to be a great psychologist. I'm probably an average psychologist, but I love doing it, and my clients really enjoy working with me too.
I bet you're better than average.
Well, that could be, but for the sake, and thank you for that, but for the sake of example, I think so many people are striving to reach this mountaintop, but they're missing the cool sacredness, the juiciness of the journey, while trying so hard to reach the pinnacle of the top. And not to say that people can't enjoy that journey along the way, but we often find, and we hear a lot of stories where people got to that place, and they spent their entire lives focused on it, but they weren't able to stop and smell the roses along the way.
Are most of your clients men?
I would say it is a 50-50 split.
Okay. So if you had to say right now, what are the top 2 to 3 issues that if you had to take an aggregate of what you're hearing and come up with a common thread, what are you hearing from people the most today?
People are, because I have a few different populations, because I have some leaders, vice president type level folks, and then I have the 15-year-old adolescent baseball player who's freaking out about striking people out. So it kind of goes across the gamut. But I would say, by and large, first and foremost, it's anxiety. And anxiety comes from a variety of different places. But ultimately, if you think about stress, stress is when our demands exceed our ability to cope. And so many people are overloaded with so much stuff, so many things to do, that they get a bit mentally hijacked, because I don't know if we've really evolved to be able to handle the amount of tasks and responsibilities that we in our current lives are kind of faced with responding to. So anxiety is the large one. The other one is this real self versus one's ideal self. And the ideal self is the person that you ultimately want to be. Your real self is the individual that you're walking around with each and every day. And the further away, or the larger that gap is between your real self and your ideal self, I think the more psychological distress that people experience, because they're wanting to be X, but they're only Y. And maybe they're wanting to be X because society's telling them to be that. Maybe they're seeing it on social media. Maybe their parents have told them that, or maybe they feel deep down inside that they should be that level, that ideal level. But for whatever reason, they're not there yet. And so the opportunity for those individuals is, do we change our expectations and start to learn how to accept and just love our real self, closing that gap? Or do we get to work to try to close the gap and bring our real self higher up to that ideal self? So closing the gap there, I think, is another big one as well.
That's a really big one.
It's massive.
And Ryan Wilkins, who I had on the show, and he was, super vulnerable and opened up a lot. He's his episode comes out tomorrow, and I just put a social clip out today about just that. And he was saying how, his internal self, he was not aligned. Like, he felt like he had to put on this veneer for everyone around him, and it sort of started to like crumble him inside. And I'm like, well, God, first of all, how amazing and brave is that of you to say? And then secondly, how many other people can relate to that?
It's that recognition, right? That's so impactful, because, and I'm not here to say that any of the glitz, glamour, working hard, doing these types of things are bad. Like, do not misquote Dr. Steve here, please. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people are not intentional about the types of lives that they want to lead. They're leading a life that is has been reinforced, so they just continue to do what it is that they always done. If you enjoy that, be intentional and continue. But I think we unless you stop and pause and have that pregnant pause with yourself, how do you really know what is up from down for you, what is left from right for you? And if you do that and you're able to figure that out, then you can progress in the journey in a much more authentic type of way.
I love that. And you're so right. So, let's talk about mental health with men specifically. It's no secret that men have been taught to sort of stuff, puff your chest out, be strong, and I really like the fact that stigma, that wall is starting to be broken down. But like, what are your thoughts on that with a male who's out there like struggling? How do you pull them to the other side to be vulnerable?
Well, there's a lot there too. So there is the stigma associated with doing that. And I think there's probably some men who have shared their feelings and it hasn't gone well. I can imagine situations where there could even be women out there that are like, I want a man that's so emotional, until he becomes emotional with you. Oh, wow, you shared way too much. And I'm not to say that always going to happen, but I'm sure that there's a little bit of internal fear there at times, or anxiety. All right, well, maybe I don't want to go there because they're not going to receive me in that safe container that they said they would based on previous experiences, whatever that might be. So there's that. There is the stigma. There is the possibility that they've been burnt doing that before in the past. Another thing, I think it's hard for some people to articulate how it is that they're actually feeling. So he may have wanted to, but when you're actually, these aren't simple things. These aren't like a real simple, like shoe, the way you tie your shoe and you just untie it by pulling the two laces and there it is. Like, you've untied your shoe. For sometimes the way that we're feeling can be a result of a variety of different things that we can't actually put a finger on. So to be able to articulate that in the moment, hell, I'm a PhD licensed psychologist, and I can be a deer in headlights trying to articulate how I'm feeling about shit. I can draw it out of others, But when I have to actually piece and parcel out, sometimes my extroverted self has to take a few walks around the block verbally and vocally until I'm actually able to say, oh yeah, that makes sense what it is that I'm experiencing. This could be why I'm experiencing that. And I'm a person that's in the business. And so if you're not even in the business or you don't really have that experience, to be able to share how it is that you're actually feeling and to actually know how it is that you're actually feeling and then to be able to share it, those are like two steps that are particularly difficult for men, definitely. But I'm sure that there's women that are listening to this as well that you're like, absolutely, Steve.
Oh, me? Yeah, for
totally.
sure. I mean, vulnerability isn't it's something I've had to really chip away at because I'm a badass bee.
You are.
You know what I'm saying?
You are.
Okay, so my mind just went back in the gutter. It's right there. It's right in the gutter.
Well,
so I got to ask the question. I'm back to I'm back to you in the RV with some hot chick. Okay, so we all have like and I think men specifically when they're trying to like woo a woman, we use what we've got, right? So you've got you got a couple of really great things in your toolbox. You're like, I'm a psychologist, baby. And you also play the guitar, which I mean, that's panty dropper, like 101. We all know that. So what would you go towards first? I'm going to give you a hypothetical. You are in the RV with your dream girl and it's, midsummer, it's hot. You've got the, heart crazy on you playing. You got some cold beverages sweating, I mean, you guys are just, it's heightened.
That sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds really good.
Okay, good. You're getting this. Okay. So then, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, I gotta drive this home. Which one are you going for first? Are you going for and you don't know each other very well. Mm-hmm. She knows basically nothing about you that other than you have a ponytail and that you're hot and that you're in an RV together, but you want to impress her. Are you going with the guitar first? Or are you going with psychologist? Like, hey, so getting into her, feelings, which one you have to pick one. What's your default?
My default. So even before in the RV, I'm an individual that tends to probably ask questions that other men may not necessarily ask. So I probably tend to go a little more emotional, or what are you really passionate about? Like what's your interest?
Okay.
So I tend to kind of go there like, wow, why are you interested in that? That's kind of interesting. And that could be really a pain in the ass for some women to take on, but some women enjoy having those types of conversations, right? So in the moment then, when I'm finally in the RV, it's not a matter of the guitar. It's not a matter of impressing them with this thing that I happen to have, this doctorate. It's about, hey, we're here. You've established comfort with me. I've established comfort with you. We've engaged in the ability to connect with one another. Now let's fucking go.
Okay.
All right. Let's take this to a level that you and I are both feeling comfortable with, and let's just go on this journey and explore and see what happens as a result.
Okay. So and going back to you're not going to dismantle my fantasy that easily. Okay. So we're back and we're still we're still in the RV, and now you're asking the questions, right? And she's like, you're getting into her little inner child. So that's the question you're going to ask her. You're going to say, so what do you really care? Say it the way you would say it to her.
Oh gosh. So assuming now that I'm asking these questions.
Yeah. You're in the, put yourself, so Steve, you're in the moment. You're in the RV, hot ass, call her a brunette, just scantily clad. There you are. Yeah. You're there. Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay.
How would you say it?
Veronica, this is awesome. We're here together right now. What are you most excited about right now? What are you most thrilled about? Not only right here, but just in life. What juices you up? Is this playing into the fantasy?
So good. This is so good. Oh my God, it's so good. And you kind of changed your voice a little bit. You're believable. Now, the other question is, when you're asking these questions, are you really listening for the answer? Or are you how long is this fucking answer going to take?
Well, that's the thing, right? That's the 41-year-old dating dilemma. Cause I do, obviously I care about people.
Yeah.
But that's the game not the game that you play, but I'm not lonely. I have plenty of friends. I have a lot of great connections. What I do not have as a single 41-year-old is physical intimacy. When you're by yourself, you do not have physical intimacy, much like in a partnership, like in an actual relationship. You at least have access to that physical intimacy, right? You also have access to the emotional intimacy and such, but I have that with friends and family. I have the ability to feel supported and connected and have deep conversations and such. What they do not provide is physical intimacy. So you have a bit of this, I don't know if paradox is the right word, where I do enjoy meeting people, but I'm really like, that's what I'm kind of seeking out in this moment.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the committed connection because I have so many committed connections with other people in my life. So it's not that I don't care about the answer, but it goes back to this. All right, like, is that the long song and dance that I want to go through for like a 4 hour for the sake of having something that frankly I've had a lot of in the past too. So it's an interesting, here it is.
Balance.
It's a balance, right? It's a balance. And it's not as cut and dry, at least for me. You know, you could ask other men out there and they may have a completely different answer. But for me, you start thinking through kind of I don't want to make it to sound transactional, but kind of this return on investment piece where, what are we really doing here to accomplish, 7 minutes of something that might be okay, but probably will just be okay because we don't really have a strong connection with one another. So these are things in my 20s I would have thought very, very different about this. In my early 30s, I would have thought very, very different about this. But in my 40s now, it's kind of this interesting dilemma where, I'm one of probably the horniest people. You ask my friends, like, yeah, Steve is a very horny guy. And I also think through kind of the downstream effects of what is this interaction or potential interaction actually end up meaning at the end of the day. I want to have this interaction with this person, get to know them a little bit, probably not go too deep connective wise. And I don't need to because I have other people I can go to kind of deep with. All right. So I'm engaging in this process for the hope of having like a really fun sexual night. Okay. Well, it may be a really fun sexual night. It could be a really awkward sexual night. It could be a night where I'm holding in farts or like, those types of things. And you start thinking through and like, well, I also want to do work tomorrow. I love getting up and going bodyboarding in the morning. And if I'm sleep compromised, is that going to take away from that? And it's not a sexy answer at all, but it's the answer that I kind of deal with in my single life as an aging man.
And when you boil it down, don't you wish you could just say, Veronica, I just want your vajayjay, and then I want you to go home.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But that's there are some sectors that you could do that. I could join like a sex, but I'm not that horny. Like I'm not like a sex club guy. Like I couldn't do that.
So let's talk about this level of horniness because I'm not a man, but I think the impression of men is that they're generally horny and that they're basically thinking about sex, whatever that number is. And who even knows that? Like, how do you, all these statistics, whatever, that men think about sex 200,000 times a day. What makes you more horny than the average guy?
Well, it's a good question. I guess I perceive that. It could be a little bit egocentric, but I have friends and it just seems like from conversation, it could be because they're in relationships.
I was just gonna say, are they married?
Yeah,
well, there's
married.
your
that could be a
yeah.
All my single friends are probably on par with like the level of horniness. So take that back. Yeah, I guess that whole section you can put a little asterisk by.
You are not more horny than the typical man.
Steve is full of shit, right? But
that's amazing.
There could be.
Okay, so is there a part of you that is pulled into like, I probably should settle down. Maybe I'll buy a house. Maybe I'll stop doing this. Like, where are you in your head as you're starting to get older? Is that starting to become more of a draw, the routine, the, being rooted? And if so, how much?
Yeah. Well, it pops up into my head, and this is where that intentionality piece comes up. And it's really hard to sift through what do you want to do versus what are you being socialized to do. And it's that's a challenge, because though I mentioned that I'm not lonely, there is, you think maybe my 40-year-old self is fine in this type of lifestyle, but what's like my 50-year-old self, or my 60-year-old self, or my 75-year-old self that would really love to have that companion, right? That's sitting next to you, watching, a concert or something, and you're holding one another's hands, the type of things that I see my parents doing, together, and they're their best friends, or, the ending of The Notebook, as romantic as that is, and kind of over the top, but nonetheless, I think there is that sense of romanticism and fantasy associated with a long-term committed partner in that regards. But then I also think, well, it doesn't always end that way either.
No.
Right? It doesn't always end that way. So I guess at the end of the day, I don't try to overthink it. I don't worry about it too much. What I end up going back to is whatever kind of ends up happening is going to end up happening. And I know whatever path I'm down, I'm going to make it the best path for me. So if I am single, I'm going to make the most of my single life and do the things that I want to do and explore. And then if I end up in a committed partnership that kind of puts some other types of compromises or constraints, or they want to be constraints because I really enjoy being with this person. And if I end up being with a person, I'm going to make that the real right path. And I think that's just the way that I look at it, because I could really, as many people do, kind of try to force things, and there's no need for that. I'm leading a really good life, and I say this a lot too, just to myself. And when people ask me about like relationship stuff, it's got to take a really special badass person to have me reconsider the type of life that I'm living right now, because what I'm doing right now, it affords me the opportunity to certainly do the types of things that I want to do, but also as my parents age, I know that they're going to need support too. So I have the freedom and the flexibility, and not only to kind of take care of Steve Graef, but also take care of the people that I really love and care about, and be able to visit family and be able to connect with friends and take care of the people that have taken care of me for so long.
Do you want kids?
On the one hand, there is this idea of the generativity, but there's also a lot of human beings on this world. And there's also a lot of kids who do not have great support systems in their life. So, if I were to say, if I wanted to take on the responsibility and the care of another human being, I could almost anticipate adopting or fostering at some point. But obviously the RV life would not support my ability to do that right now. But there's a lot of people that I think don't have those supports, that rather than me having my own child, maybe my resources and my time could be better spent actually lifting up more individuals who might not have that support.
I love that. Your stock just went up even higher.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's certainly not the intent, and I'm not walking the walk either.
No, but I think that's really, I find like there's so many different ways to build a family. And I just think for you to have that initial, like, I would love to adopt, I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. And it floats around. At the end of the day, that's a very like there's a lot associated with it, but that's kind of my general philosophy about children in the next generation too. Like,
it's very selfless, in my opinion. Like, I think that so again, what you're in the 1%, and here's where you're in the 1% again. So you're what, 6'2", athletic, handsome, played football for Ohio State. So many guys would be like, yeah, I want to procreate and I want to, see if I can make an athlete. I mean, how many guys would be, and women alike, would be doing that, playing that game? Let's build an athlete. Let's make an athlete, whatever. In your mind, your priority is thinking about somebody being on this earth who could be better served with your love and care. I think is altruistic the right word? I don't even know what the right word is, but I think it's very cool. Let's put it in my lingo. I think it's fucking cool.
Well, thank you. And again, to level set, it's not like I have done Big Brother, Big Sister, right, or I'm donating to the cause, but that's actually something that I would like to do more of. At least it's on the radar, but until I actually putting steps in front of it, I'm not doing that. I do that in my work a bit, right? I'm helping support people, but I think that's something I could go the extra mile on.
I mean, and I don't know shit about anything, but like when I look at you, I don't know that I envision the white picket fence. I feel like that would kill your soul, man. I really do. I think you're destined for some sort of 1% situation, whether it's finding a woman that's like as adventurous and which, I mean, there's so many out there. It's just a matter of finding them. But I just, oh my God, you being like in Powell, Ohio and, you know, or like even here in Arlington, like I just couldn't imagine. I mean, you definitely would improve the atmosphere, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think your soul would just be just dimming day by day by day.
Yeah, I don't think that sphere at this point in my life would satisfy me. You know, something a little more off the beaten path or flexible, yeah, for sure. But right now the RV life is doing the job. I rattle around with boat life.
Oh, really?
Time to time. Yeah, there's this thing called the Great Loop that folks may or may not have heard of, but essentially there's this series of interconnected waterways that, let's say it starts in Florida and you have the intercoastal. The intercoastal runs all the way up essentially to New York Harbor, and then you have the Hudson River from the New York Harbor that goes into, I believe, Lake Huron, and then Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, and then you can take the Mississippi River down the Ohio River to the Tennessee River into the Gulf of Mexico, back around the tip of Florida into the intercoastal, and then that is called the Great Loop. And all of those waterways connect. So I've researched it a little bit, and it could be, I'm not completely saying bucket list, but it's this intriguing kind of next step from RV life to purchase a boat, live on a boat for a little bit, get to know the boat, and then take it on this Great Loop adventure to, yeah, see what water life is like.
Man, you just shifted my visual completely.
Yes.
Now you're like, you know, putting the sail up, and you've got the, oh yeah, now we've got a whole, now I have to reframe my whole entire thought process on this.
Totally.
That would be really incredible.
Yeah, it's I've watched YouTube videos on it. I bought books and stuff. So just kind of very early. So don't hold my hand to this, you know, podcast fear, but it's just intriguing to me. And I've, you the older you get, you start to again kind of realize what are the environments that you really enjoy and thrive in being in, and being deliberate about that. And, you know, anytime I'm around water, there is this sense of calm and enjoyment and kind of the this final frontier, you know, kind of channel my own Ponce de Leon a bit, where like there's this thing that's out there that could be discovered, and water kind of has this sense associated with it. Driving west has that sense to it. Anytime I drive west in the RV, especially as you get out towards, you know, some of the mountains and where the sun's setting, it just has that different feel on the desert. You know, you can just imagine these early settlers going into the unknown and not knowing what's on the other side. And that's the human spirit. That's the animal spirit, you know, that's out there kind of searching and seeing what's out there, and going on the path one step at a time.
Do you know the song Southern Cross?
Oh yeah. Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Around the world, looking for that woman. You know love can endure, and you know it will. That always reminds me of being on a boat on St. John.
Oh,
not in St. John. You're on St. John, and it's not St. John's. You're on St. John. Very specific. Very specific. These people.
Jimmy Buffett did the cover of that song.
Oh, did he?
Which even adds to like that beach island atmosphere too, or it ruins it for you depending on if you're a Jimmy
it would
Buffett
ruin it. It would ruin it for me.
Right.
Not a Jimmy Buffett fan.
Yeah, hit or miss.
You know, unless I was like 3 sheets to the wind. And
you know what's interesting? Excellently average. He's a guy that I would point to as a bit of a role model. Might be too strong of a word, but he's a guy I tend to point to for somebody who I would look up to, because I wouldn't say, and I think most people wouldn't say, that Jimmy Buffett, when you think of musical talent, comes to the top of the list. Yet he has found a way to carve out one of the most impressive musical legacies ever.
You're right.
And I think there's something to be said about that, that if you are out there listening, and you don't feel like you have a tremendous of like God-given, universe-given, Mother Earth-given talent, that you can still, if you want to, do great things in your life by being incredibly average consistently.
So speaking of being incredibly average, these shows that you're putting on, and what is St. Augustine? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So what are the main songs you're singing?
So we try to bring 3 new songs different each time that we do it, just to keep the variety going. But what I'm finding now, I used to sing in bands, and when I sang in bands, we would do all sorts of things: Pearl Jam, Guns N' Roses, Lady Gaga, Foo Fighters. So it was really all over the map as far as the things that I would sing. What's been interesting is singing and playing guitar has actually initially, it's starting to change a little bit, but initially it's actually the guitar has served as a little bit of a barrier to me feeling comfortable singing the types of things that I used to sing before. And it's because I'm focused on trying to play guitar right that I can't just focus and let go of the voice and just let the voice do whatever the voice is going to do. So what I'm finding is kind of slower outlaw country or remixes of rock music, classic rock music, tends to allow me to play the guitar a little bit more slowly and easily with easier chords and such, which then allows me to sing better.
Okay, we're going to each do our best Eddie Vedder voice.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you can pick a line that you want, and I'm going to pick a line, and then we'll have the people decide who does a better Eddie Vedder voice.
Yeah, great voice. Great voice. Go ahead.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me?
No, please.
Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on.
Off to a great start.
Okay. Sheets of air. Wait, hold on. Sheets of velvet cranberry, untouched sheets of gray. Her legs spread out before me as her body lays there.
Well, that's pretty good.
I kind of sound like Elvis. Okay, no, you go.
On the wind and on a wish it all away again. And I know what I said, and I call what I said, and I call out again.
I mean,
Truce.
you got a good Eddie Vedder situation going on.
Wow, thank you. Elvis, talk about performance and high performance. I went to Graceland, and I was struck. In Graceland, they had some of these quotes and obviously a lot of information about Elvis. But the piece of information that really stood out is Elvis had stage fright before every single show. Very bad stage fright. And I look at that and I'm thinking, if Elvis, the king of rock and roll, had stage fright, certainly a quarterback at Centerville is allowed to have stage fright,
right?
Or a ballerina at Ballet Mat is certainly allowed to have stage fright. So for all of you that are out there that get a little performance anxiety before giving a talk to your senior leadership team, or before going out to dance, or before going and asking out that person at Starbucks, like, it's okay. Even the king of rock and roll got nervous.
I mean, isn't it part of the human experience? Wouldn't it be weird if you didn't feel anything?
I think it would be a little weird. And in fact, that energy that fight or flight is meant to charge you up a little bit.
Right.
Learn how to channel that shit and bottle it and use it in a cathartic type of way that delivers you into the type of performance persona that you need to get done whatever you need to get done.
Right now, when you're in St. Augustine performing, are you doing covers?
Yes.
And like, what are you mostly doing? Like Pearl Jam, like 90s rock type stuff?
90s rock type stuff, outlaw country, so a lot of stuff. But then I also have my own music. That was kind of an interesting journey too. Last year, I got on this kick where I wrote a song every day for 50 days. So I sat down with a guitar and I wrote a song and I posted it on Instagram. So I thought, well, I'm writing these songs, I might as well like put them, I should actually distribute them and actually have them out there for a couple people to listen to if they want to, meaning my parents.
I'd listen.
You listen to
Yeah,
him?
I would listen.
Yeah. So Dr. Steve's Music, I created like a Spotify channel and an artist name and such, and an Apple Music channel. And so if you go and look for Dr. Steve's Music, there's some songs and such that are out there. So that's been a cool journey as well. It's weird to call myself a musician, but technically by the book,
Yeah,
I would be. But that's been a fun journey too.
I love that. Well, you're just an enigma wrapped in an amazing riddle, aren't you?
Wow, that is more adjectives.
You really are. You really are. It's so fun. I could talk to you all day, but we're coming up on 60 minutes. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
60 minutes on the dot.
Right now.
On the dot. Will you come back sometime?
Anytime.
I feel like you should be kind of when you're flying into town on your RV, you should be kind of a cameo, the Dr. Steve cameo.
I would love the opportunity. This has been super fun, and hopefully the listening public are able to extract some things from the truth serum that you put in. I'd say job well done on getting pretty close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for everybody who's out there, please follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And if you feel so inclined today and you like the interview, can you just pass it on to a friend? I would be so happy. And until next time, keep moving.